That was so
All right.
fun.
Folks, it is 6 o'clock, so if Brianna will put the flag up, we will start our meeting the way we normally do. Welcome to the meeting of Yelm City Council of October 12th, 2021. Please join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Job on the flag raising and lowering, Brianna. If our clerk will please take the roll.
Councilmember James Blair. Councilmember Molly Carmody. Councilmember EJ Curry.
Here.
Councilmember Holly Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Tracy Wood.
I mean here.
There you go.
Councilmember Joe DePinto.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Kaminsky.
Here.
Mayor JW Foster.
Here. And per our protocol, Councilmember Carmody called in. She will be recorded as a excused absence. And if Councilmember Blair joins us, he will be noted in the minutes as what time he joins the meeting. It takes us on to agenda approval.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Terry and seconded by EJ. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have our agenda. So we'll jump right into our special presentation. Stephanie Dice is going to talk to us about the budget.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. If I can figure out how to work a PowerPoint. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So what we have here is just the first of a budget presentation. Tonight we're going to be focusing in on general fund revenue and expenditures and going over the timeline that we've come up with as we walk through this mid-biennium budget process. So if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. Michael, Graham, if you want to jump in, feel free. All right. Uh-oh. Okay. So mission statement: to provide essential public services and infrastructure to keep Yelm a desirable place to live, work, and learn. And then we have our vision for Yelm to be a safe, healthy, happy home for all, with safe neighborhoods and schools, sustainable, cost-effective public infrastructure, a strong, diverse economy, vibrant public places with an enduring connection to our history, and the best run government. So we're going to dive into the general fund, and we're just going to look at the revenues, some of the major revenue sources of the general fund. And retail sales tax is the largest revenue source of the general fund, followed by property tax. And as most of you know, we're limited on how much property tax can increase by 1%. And then we have some other tax categories. We have utility taxes, and those are taxes that are both the city-owned utilities and also private utilities, such as PSE, telephone, cable utilities, that sort of thing. Then we get some state-shared criminal justice tax money. Business and occupation taxes is something that this city participates in, and we actually administer that internally with our own staff. We have some revenue attributed to licenses and permits, some intergovernmental revenue, and then charges for services. So those are all the major players of general fund revenues. When we look at the property tax, what happens every year is that the Thurston County Assessor's Office will send me a worksheet, and they'll tell me what they think the preliminary assessed valuation is going to be for the next year. And so they give me a worksheet, and I calculate out what the preliminary property tax might be. And so right now, with what they've given me, it's calculating at $1,574,323. Now, this can fluctuate based on new construction, based on if there's any refunds that they want to send to us. So as we walk through the budget process, this number might change a little bit, probably not significantly, but this is the preliminary that we've received so far. When we look at sales tax, we try and estimate out how sales tax is going to grow. So we're confident that by the end of 2021, we might hit $2.5 million in sales tax. When we look out to the next few years, we've adjusted it for a sales tax growth of about 2.5%. And some of the outlying communities are going as high as 4%, but we feel that with this community, we know that federal household stimulus checks are going to taper off, but we also know that there's going to be some commercial growth. And so we feel like it's a conservative estimate to increase it by 2.5%, given the scenarios that are going on in the local economy. The other categories, utility taxes, business and occupation taxes, and criminal justice taxes, we see moderate growth in those areas. The city has Kim Rocker, who has really been working diligently on the B&O tax program, and she's done a great job. We're seeing a little bit of slow growth in that as new businesses come in and learn how to do the correct reporting. This is kind of a history of general fund salaries and benefits, which by far is the largest cost of the general fund. And as you can see on here, the orange is the salaries, the yellow would be the benefits. And then in 2022 and 2023, I did bump those up, just thinking about how the contract negotiations might affect the general fund. Of course, we want to plan for that a little bit and try and estimate it, but we don't have a dollar amount at this point. So as we work through this process, we'll keep coming back to council and letting them know how things are going and give you updates. And then this is just a brief look at the 4 utility funds. They're all fairly healthy. We are going to come back at a later date and talk about all the capital projects that affect the utility funds. But right now, just their fund balances, their operating revenues, and expenditures are all looking fairly healthy. So some of the things that we are very focused on is to attract and retain employees necessary for providing high quality services. So the city is trying to maintain a competitive compensation and benefit package with public and private sectors per our financial policies. And then the other goal that we've discussed before is meeting that 15% of operating expenditures as a minimum general fund balance. And as we work through this process, I think the council will be able to meet that goal going forward. So here's just, I can't believe Michael Graham hasn't jumped in yet, but here is our schedule just going forward in the next few months. So on October 21st, we'll have a finance committee just to discuss some of the budget items that we'll be bringing forward later to the full council. On October 26th, we'll have the first public hearing on the property taxes. We will have the first reading of the property tax ordinance, and then we'll have the first reading of the mid-biennium budget modifications. November 2nd is what I want to come back to council and really talk about the major capital projects that we have going this year that might be carrying over into next year, and also some new capital projects that were budgeted for 2022. And then on November 9th, we'll do our second public hearing on the property taxes, and we'll do our first public hearing on the mid-biennium budget ordinance. And those hearings are required by law. November 23rd, we'll have our second and final public hearing on the mid-biennium budget ordinance. We hope to adopt the property tax ordinance. And then we will also do a 2021 budget amendment if needed. Right now, I really don't have any items for that. And so we'll just kind of, if we need it, we'll throw it in there. If not, then we don't need to. December 7th is a study session. If we need it, we'll use that for budget deliberations with City Council. And then on December 14th, we're hoping to adopt the final mid-biennium budget ordinance as required by RCW. So that is all I had tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a quick question. You said something about the B&O, the business and occupation, that it was handled internally.
Right.
So can you just briefly tell me what that means?
So are you familiar with Department of Revenue?
A little bit.
Yeah, so Department of
basic.
Revenue actually, when you go to a store and you purchase an item and you pay sales tax, that sales tax money is sent to Department of Revenue, and then it turns around and gets dispersed out. On the B&O taxes, we actually assess those and collect those ourselves. So it's
Okay.
not funneling through a state or a county agency.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? right.
I want to read something from the chat. Josh Crossman says, as a B&O taxpayer, I just want to say that Kim Rocker has done a great job and really helpful with answering questions. So thank you for that comment, Josh.
Yes, thank you.
I don't see any other questions or hands up from the council. So I'll just say thank you to Stephanie and for Michael and the team for putting this together. The timeline is in part, we have to do it certain things by RCW, but we also have set up an internal cadence to make this presentable and digestible to the council. What's really important going forward, council, is your participation in your subcommittee meetings at the finance level and with public services and public safety, particularly because this budget amendment has some very important aspects to it that you can advocate for, and you'll get more information at your subcommittee level on how best to do that and bring that knowledge support back to the general council meetings. So thank you for that, Stephanie. And without further questions, I will move back to our public comment period. Now, I know that our guests here tonight are just here to for one part of the meeting. So I'll tell you, everybody, remind everybody that the public comment period as an opportunity for members of the council or members of the community to address the council on anything that is coming to their mind. But if we have it on the agenda, we reserve comments for those items at the agenda time. So at this time, if anybody from the public would like to address the council, you can get my attention either by raising your real hand, or you could type in something in the question and answer box to get my attention. I think that's the best way. So I see that we still have a number of citizens in attendance. I'm seeing no attention grabbing. And so I'll say that we've satisfied our opportunity for public comment.
No, you got a real hand.
Oh, yeah. Come on up and stand at the dais if you would.
Just to clarify, if we're on the agenda though, should we wait to make our?
You should wait till then.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks.
Good practice though. All right, so we don't have any other public comment at this time. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. which has the 2021 year-to-date financial status report and the minutes from the last two previous meetings.
I move we approve the consent agenda. Tracy Wood.
Second, EJ Curry.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have a consent agenda. You know what I'm doing here? This is very interesting. You're going to have to bear with me for a minute. Can you give me that paper copy? While I find, yeah,
I got you.
all right.
They're still waiting to be signed.
Councilmember Curry wants to remind everybody that in the council that we still have a packet of materials that need to be signed by all the council members. So if you want to swing by City Hall and put your signature on there, that would be very helpful. Appreciate it. The other thing, I was reading off of a previous agenda that was on my screen rather than the one that should have been in my hand. And I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that the consent agenda had the 2022 community event approval calendar on there as well. So all part of your packet, no surprises there, but just wanted to make sure that that was recorded properly. And so we will go into new business then, starting with a public services agreement. And I believe Pat is going to walk us through that.
Yes, I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to remind you kind of where we've been on this one. As you may recall, back in July, the Yelm Parks Advisory Committee presented a recommendation to City Council that an off-leash dog park be built on a parcel of land located on the east side of Roten Road across from the Public Services Building. So in preparing for that project, Council approved a professional services agreement with Skillings Incorporated on June 22nd for providing design engineering services for the proposed dog park. So what we plan to do is to build this dog park in two phases. The first phase will include building a gravel roadway to provide construction access for our upcoming water reclamation facility project, and also preliminary grading for the new dog park. Now, phase two will complete construction of the remainder of the dog park amenities, including new restroom facilities, a paved parking area for the public, and paving of the access drive that leads to the WRF. We anticipate that the design of phase two will be completed in early 22 with phase two construction to follow. But for the phase one portion of the project, a request for bids from several area excavating contractors was solicited in late September for completing phase one work. Bids were opened on October 1st. 5 sealed bids were received and were reviewed for completeness and accuracy. Barcott Construction of Chehalis, Washington was determined to be the lowest qualified bidder. And so a public services contract for providing these services has been drafted, and I have included that in your agenda packet this evening. So staff is recommending approval to authorize Mayor Foster to sign a public services contract with Barcott Construction in the not to exceed amount of $191,100, including Washington state sales tax, for construction of phase one of the Yelm Dog Park and WRF access road. By the way, the phase one construction will be paid for using 2021 budgeted funds from the municipal building fund. So if you have any questions regarding this contract or the project in general, fire away.
I see a hand. Let's see, where is that? Councilmember DePinto? And then Councilmember Kaminsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Patrick, thanks for the presentation. You may have said it, but when was the completion date expected?
Well, we're starting this, like I said, it's being built in 2 phases. Phase 2, we expect to build probably sometime next late spring or summer when the design for phase 2 gets done.
So hopefully open by fall of
I
next
hope
year.
so. I hope so, and so do a lot of people. This is a very popular project, so we're going to move
Absolutely.
along pretty quick.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Somebody else?
Terry?
I just wondered if we got a higher bid from a more local company, are we allowed to go back to them and say, hey, would you match this lower bid? Are we allowed to do that? Do we do that?
We are required through RCW to take the lowest qualified bidder. And what that means is if a particular bidder does not meet the requirements set forth for bidding, we need to award it. It's a public bid, so we need to award it to the lowest
Right,
qualified bidder.
right. But say there was a qualified bidder from Yelm. Could you go back to them and say, hey, we received this from Chehalis. Can you match this price? Are we allowed to do that?
No, I can't do that. I don't believe that's allowed under RCW rules. When we put a bid out for public bidding, we're then
It's just
declared.
a one-time thing. Here's the number, send it in.
I can't speak to that, the legal ramifications of that. Tonight, I really wasn't prepared for that, but if you'd like me to look into that, I can. But under the rules of what we have put forth in the bidding documents, we did state that we would be awarding this to the lowest bidder.
Okay, I was just curious.
Thanks for the questions. Good presentation. There's a motion suggestion in your packet. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. I move we approve and authorize Mayor Foster to sign a public service agreement with Barcott Construction for Phase 1 of the Dog Park and WRF Access Road.
Second, Councilmember Smith.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Thank you.
I might mention too that if the name Barcott Construction is familiar to any of you, that's the same contractor that did our Mill Road sidewalk project here earlier this year. So we have experience in working with them, and they worked out very well. So I was pleased to see that they submitted the bid and also were awarded. So I'm looking forward to working with them again.
Yeah, they did a great job on that project. So looking forward to what they can do with the new one. Okay, let's move on to the interlocal agreement with Thurston County for GIS data sharing. And who's going to do this one for us?
Well, you get me again. You get a double bonus here tonight. So, so included in your packet is the interlocal agreement between the City of Yelm and Thurston County. The purpose of this agreement is to allow the sharing and use of geospatial data between the city and Thurston County. Now, Yelm and Thurston County each have jurisdictional responsibility associated with land use planning, infrastructure development, transportation management, resource management, all within the boundaries of the City of Yelm and its urban growth area. Both organizations use geographic information systems technology, you may know it more commonly referred to as GIS, to perform work and comply with policy, legal mandates. And there is a lot of mutual public benefit to both parties in sharing GIS data with one another that will allow both parties to accomplish these goals at a lower cost. Now, there are two parts to this agreement. Because of the constantly changing nature of technology, we found that it was most efficient to create the technical details in a separate document. These details are outlined in a document entitled Letter of Interlocal Agreement Details, appropriately enough, that is also included in your agenda packet. The details within this letter are referenced in Section 2 of the Interlocal Agreement. The details letter will be signed by the City of Yelm's GIS coordinator and Thurston County's Information Technology Director. And when the work described in this letter requires any modification, a new letter with a revised date and details will be drafted and signed by both parties. So here again, staff is recommending approval to authorize Mayor Foster to sign an interlocal agreement with Thurston County entitled Interlocal Agreement between City of Yelm and Thurston County for sharing geospatial data. So if you've got any questions about this agreement or about the specific details of the data to be exchanged, I'll try to answer those for you as well.
I am not seeing any hands, so you've done another great job of presenting information. Seems like reasonable, and we look for a motion from council.
I move to approve and authorize Mayor Foster to sign an interlocal agreement with Thurston County for GIS data sharing.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Curry. Or any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Pat. Kathy, I'm going to just take a moment here. Could you please email Councilmember Blair with the phone number that he could use to call in? He's unable to make video contact, so per the council's policy, on a rare occasion, we do allow a verbal only. Councilmember Blair, if you are actually able to unmute and talk on the connection you have, we could consider this one of the rare occasions where an audio only is allowed per council's policy. But if not, Kathy will be sending you an email or hopefully she has your cell phone and can text you what the phone number is to call into the meeting.
I can unmute, but I tried to turn the video on and it killed my connection immediately.
Okay. We'll move on to the Unified Development Code updates, and I believe Landon's going to walk us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, good to be with you tonight. I am Landon Hawes, the planning and building manager for City of Yelm, and have a fair amount to talk about with you tonight. So we'll just jump right into it. You should have seen this at the study session a couple months ago. I believe that was back in July. So this is more of a refresher PowerPoint instead of presenting anything new. So looking forward to sharing this with you, and I will pause for questions at the end of the presentation if you have any questions about what's being presented. We are dividing the code updates and the rezone into two different items. So if we could get a motion after the development code updates separate from the rezone for those to be considered separately, that would be great. Okay, so this is what's on our docket tonight. Number one, to allow drive-through windows in the central business district in certain areas of the central business district. Number two, an increase of residential density in commercial zones for mixed-use developments. Number three, to allow chain link fencing with significant buffering. Number four, to review regulations for RV and mini storage. Number five, to waive fees for nonprofit housing. And number six, to review regulations for tiny homes. And then, of course, the rezone separate from the development code update is looking to rezone certain industrial properties to R6. Okay, so the first item, allowing drive-through windows in the central business district, and specifically allowing non-food service drive-through establishments. So the request came from a pharmacy, but what Planning Commission and staff landed on was proposing that non-food serving drive-through establishments in the CBD can be allowed as long as their traffic is not exiting onto Yelm Avenue or First Street. So that's number one. And then number two is for density in commercial zones. The request was to increase the residential density allowance in commercial zones. And what Planning Commission's recommendation ultimately ended up being was allowing apartments at up to 32 units per acre instead of 16 units per acre, only as part of a mixed-use development that can only be 2/3 residential. You can't make it all residential. And the mixed-use development does require that a minimum 30% of commercial be constructed prior to the completion of any residential. And the infrastructure for any remaining commercial has to be constructed prior to the completion of residential.
Landon, could we interrupt you with questions as we go?
Please, Mr. Mayor. Yep.
Councilmember DePinto has a question for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Landon, good presentation so far. Hey, I'm curious, you mentioned it was pharmacy driven for the first one. It makes total sense. The second question, though, was that requested by a developer or an apartment complex, or how'd that come about?
Yeah, Cody, let me defer to you on that one because this was kind of begun prior to my time here. So Cody, do you have an answer for us on that?
This slide currently, you're asking about, Councilmember DePinto?
Yeah, who initiated the density request?
Yeah, so this was brought up in two things. Developers brought it up, but it was also brought up by a couple businesses that wanted to have denser commercial, specifically up on the hill, in some of those high areas where they wanted to stack commercial with residential in those areas.
Cool,
Yeah.
makes sense. Thank you.
Okay,
Go ahead, Landon. Follow through.
I was just going to ask if there are any other questions.
Yeah, so actually, you had earlier asked to hold questions till the end, but you're comfortable with us interrupting you as we go?
Yeah, if you want to just do it as we go, that's fine.
Okay, I think it might be easier for council to stay on topic if we do it this way. And I'm
Understood.
also going to break with tradition because we don't have it happen very often, but I have an attendee who would like to make a comment or ask a question for clarifying. So I'm going to allow Kurt to ask his question. He'll have to unmute. And then actually, Kurt, if you could just ask your quick clarifying question or perhaps your quick comment, that would be helpful.
Oh, thank you, sir. I was just going to, Kurt Wilson here, a developer, Sound Built Homes for the Toma Terra project. And the question I was going to ask, and maybe this is not at the right time, was related to the, when you're doing a mixed use, having to complete all of the improvements before the residential element is complete on the commercial. It's a little problematic sometimes when you don't have all the tenants identified to get the buildings erected. So I was just hoping to have some time for further comment on that element when the time is appropriate.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern, Kurt, that we've heard before, and we'll certainly with Landon on board now and working with Cody, we'll work to take a look at that so that there can be, maybe there's some room for modification of that code in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Go with Councilmember Kaminsky and then Councilmember Blair.
Yes, on the drive-through, the only street that is not the highway is 2nd Street. And that goes right into our civic area. And just wondered if we're prepared for a whole bunch of traffic in there, because I noticed also that people are turning onto 2nd Street in order to connect with Mossman and the new light and to bypass the main intersection. So I'm feeling like that's going to get a ton of traffic. And also the restaurant, the Masonry, is expanding their restaurant right there. That is going to be a super, super duper busy corner. So are they going to do a real traffic study before we decide this?
We haven't received a traffic study from them as far as I know. Cody, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
We haven't required it of them. You know, as we discussed it in the Planning Commission, it was felt that that wasn't required. And I don't believe anything was, you know, said to this point by anyone else.
And then if we ever get our school down the street, I mean, I really think it's going to be a big problem. Does anybody else feel the same way?
Councilmember Kaminsky, we will, no intersection will be allowed to fail. So that's one thing when they do put in a drive-through or a business adjustment, they'll have to come out with a traffic study that does not cause an intersection to fail. And if they do, then there'd have to be revisions they would have to meet in order to make sure that doesn't happen. So
So if we say okay to this, that's not the end of it. There's still going to be studies.
yeah, they can't just start jamming drive-throughs on, you know,
Right.
the police station and the dojo down there. They can't just jam drive-throughs, and they have to go through a study to put the drive-through in with a building modification and prove that they're not failing at an intersection.
And then on this mixed use, I thought you were referring to the central business district. And my question was, do we even have any mixed use that exists there now? I don't think we do.
So I don't believe that we do in the CBD. This is more, we're talking about the C1, C2, C3 zones.
Is there C
Or-
1, 2, 3 up the hill into Homaterra? Or is that their zoning there like that?
We do have some commercial zoning up there.
So that's more what you're referring to.
This is not, yeah, this is not just focused on, this part is not focused on central business district only. The drive-through was, this part is all the commercial.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I just,
So-
we're looking at increasing density, but I don't think we even have anything that's any denser or less dense at the moment. So that was my question.
Yeah, so this is definitely kind of a conceptual, you know, for commercial that we will get in the future or existing commercial zones, then
Okay.
we will, you know, this will apply if adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Blair?
So that kind of answered it. I was trying to figure out the area on this mixed use zone. What commercial zones exactly are there? Where are they at? And does this include the downtown area for like in the future if one of those places were to want to do a major overhaul and put apartments on top? Or does this include for, I'm assuming commercial would be over by the movie theater and Safeway, that whole area? Is that what we're talking about? Or-
So this just applies to any property that is zoned C1, C2, or C3 in the city. Central Business District is its own set of regulations.
Okay. Do we have this option currently in the Central Business District?
Cody, do we allow mixed use in CBD right now?
There has been in the past, as you guys know, like the bowling alley used to have an apartment on top. Same with the old, I guess it's faux now, there used to be a different, there used to be some residential areas in there along with the dojo on top. So yeah, we've had that in the past. Currently, I do not believe there is any approved mixed use in the Central Business District. White Horse, yeah. There you go. So there is one, but that, besides that, I don't believe there's any other approved mixed use, but there could be, yes.
So there could be down there.
There could
okay.
be, based on their previous.
The only concern I have with that one is also the requiring of 30% of the commercial being finished prior to residential. And I think it was already addressed as to why. I mean, so if you don't know who the tenants are, then you don't know what exact infrastructure needs to go in. So that's the only part that I would probably remove out. But other than that, I like it. But
yeah, and go ahead,
this is
Councilmember
not-
Blair, sorry.
This is not residential. This is just the commercial zones.
Correct. Yeah, this only applies to commercial zones.
Okay.
Just for some clarification, for instance, with Thurston Apartments, when that was constructed, that was supposed to have a commercial component to it, but the developer just built residential, and then it kind of never ended up doing the commercial as was required by the site plan. You know, we can go into the reasons for that if you want, but having this minimum 30% requirement, you know, you don't have to have all of your commercial tenants. We agree that, you know, requiring 100% of commercial to be built out prior to completion of residential might not be feasible economically for whatever reason. So that's kind of why we landed on this 30%, so that if we want mixed use, if the developer is promising mixed use, then we will get some kind of mixed use with the mixed use development instead of the potential for 100% build out of residential and 0 of commercial. So just to give a little bit of clarification on why we stuck that 30% number in there.
So to get to that 30%, technically, could you just, I mean, most of these mixed use, it's the bottom floor is all commercial. Usually you'll see the wide open glass windows, all of that. So if they've built that out, but maybe the inside isn't exactly built to where it's going to be for a tenant, they would be able to meet the 30% somewhere.
Yeah, and we also allow horizontal mixed use, quote unquote, where it's one development, but maybe the apartments are on the west of the side and commercials on the east or something like that. So that would apply. This regulation would apply to that situation as well.
So I mean, I guess it's the 30% thing. Does that mean that 30% of the commercial units need to be completed? Or is it 30% of the total work of that commercial area? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, we would define that as 30% of the square footage of the commercial development. So whatever's on their plan, 30% of that has to be built out before residential. If you've got 10,000 square feet of commercial, then you'd be doing 3,000 square feet of that at least before residential is completed.
So was there any repercussions for the Tuscan apartments that didn't fulfill their commercial end?
Cody, I'll have to look to you for that. That's before my time.
So Terry, make sure you use the raised hand because Joe had put his up and was waiting his turn to ask a question.
Sorry.
But good question, and I do want to go back to it. Go ahead, Councilmember DePinto.
I'll go ahead because with the same topic, I was going to go back to the pharmacy issue. So if Terry wants to ask her a question, I'll go after her.
So I can answer the question because of historical knowledge of that.
Okay.
That was an issue that we had with the developer of Thurston. They presently have an application being reviewed for some of their commercial that we've been asking them to do for some time. So it's moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question was back on the pharmacy. It was more of a comment, and I heard another council member talk about the impacts to traffic, and I share that concern too. Is one of the first things. And if you look at your packet, though, it does show you the different amount of peak trips per 1,000 square feet with drive-throughs. The different types of businesses, like the coffee/donut shop is the highest at 43 peak trips per hour, or excuse me, per 1,000 square feet with drive-through. And I believe these are per hour. And Landon, correct me if I'm wrong. But the fast foods was 32, banks was 20, and pharmacy was the lowest at 10. We already have right across the street from the only pharmacy, Tim's down in downtown. The only one across from that uses a drive-through is the bank over there, and that's literally right across the street from them. And I've lived in this city for a long time, and I don't ever notice a huge backup of traffic coming out of that their drive-through. And also, I don't believe that they want to exit out on that main street anyway. I'm not 100%. They haven't done their plans or anything and they would put a traffic mitigation study and all that if they do decide to move forward with it. But just to alleviate concerns, it's going to be a very minimal impact, especially much less than that bank, which should be double the amount that a pharmacy does. So just to clarify.
But let that bank start selling coffee and cookies and watch out. All right, good questions. Thank you, Landon, for entertaining that break in your presentation. I think you're ready to move along to the next section.
Okay, that sounds good, Mayor. Thank you. Chain link fencing, we had a request to allow it. And there are definitely strong feelings on both sides of this issue from a lot of different people. So staff and planning commission worked really hard to try to find a happy medium. And so the Planning Commission's recommendation is to allow chain link fencing with, when it's adjacent to the right of way, create a dense landscape screen. And when it's simply visible from the right of way, but not adjacent, then to create a perimeter landscape. And then if for whatever reason those requirements seem unnecessary to staff, then those could be modified or waived. I doubt there would be too many situations where we would waive those requirements, but we are giving ourselves a little bit of flexibility just in case there is a special situation.
Councilmember Blair?
So this is one of those times when I feel like I think people should be able to use a chain link fence if they want. The whole point that someone would want to use a chain link fence, typically it's security and it's cost effective. By requiring them to do all this dense landscape and all this other stuff, we're completely eliminating the cost effectiveness part of it. We're not an HOA. So I don't think we should, that whole part of it shouldn't be in here. If someone wants to put a chain link fence up, then by all means, let them put a chain link fence up. But this whole requiring landscape improvements to not see it, like we're not an HOA, so let's not act like one.
Councilmember Kaminsky?
Where is this landscape? This is in the downtown corridor. Can you explain again, Landon, where this is going to be?
This is anywhere that chain link fencing is desired, residential, commercial, wherever.
Well, the reason to hide it with landscaping is because it's ugly. That's why. So I don't agree with the chain link fencing at all. I think that just makes us go backwards in everything we're trying to do to make things look good.
Councilmember Wood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe, I spent some time putting up fences in my life, and I tell you, the one thing about chain link fences is they're very clean. The corners are nice and sharp, and they're easily maintained. And I have to agree with James. It's the cost effectiveness of a chain link fence is completely null and void when we're requiring all these other things. And I wish I would have thought of it, but I agree with him. We're not an HOA. I don't like this recommendation at all.
Councilmember DePinto?
Thank you, Mayor. I would have to agree with Councilmember Wood and Blair on this one. I think that, for both the points they made, it's cost effectiveness, by having that chain link fence, a lot of times they are trying to save some money on it, and being that it's also residential, we're talking about some of our residents here that are on fixed incomes that might not necessarily be as wealthy as others and can't afford other types of fencing, let alone to landscape. I think it would behoove us to make sure that we look out for those citizens as well.
Councilmember Smith?
So I just want to clarify, this was this for residential and business?
Anything in the city, and only if it is adjacent to the right of way or visible from the right of way.
Because I was looking at the pictures that you put it, or that are in the packet, kind of gives, a couple of examples. And I don't like the idea of somebody's personal property. But I'm a little bit with Terry on the main drag of the looks of it, but not necessarily for a residence, but for a business owner. That's just my take.
Councilmember Blair?
I understand the concerns for like the downtown, the looks of it, but again, that's not our responsibility. That's the business responsibility.
No.
If they want to attract customers, then you have an attractive business. But and in addition to that, it says if it's visible from the right of way. The city has right of ways everywhere. In every neighborhood. Everywhere that's next to a street is a right of way. So this would basically affect everyone. And I'm going to acknowledge that someone said no. Yes, our job is not to dictate how pretty the city is. Our job is to do the work of the city and protect the rights of the people. That's the government's job. Do the business city, protect the rights of the people. It's not our job to play HOA. So if anyone wants to have a chain link fence, they should be able to have a chain link fence. If you're a business downtown, probably not the best idea. And by doing so, you're probably going to deter customers from wanting to go there. And they will face the consequences of that with their business. But as far as saying, if you want to have this, you need to spend X amount of money to make it pretty in front of it. That's HOA stuff. That's not us.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
If that's not us, then why do we have landscape design parameters for everything that we do? Everything that's new right now has parameters, curbing, street, all these things that add money to businesses when they're building. Why do we have that if it doesn't matter? And my other question is, if we really have to have chain link, is black chain link fencing more expensive than metal chain link fencing? Does anybody know?
It is a little more expensive, but it's ultimately it's all considered chain link fencing, and that's, I guess, part of the problem here is we have a really vague overlaying recommendation that's not really deciphering between. I mean, as I guess he's argued. It's been clarified that this includes everything within the city that you can see from a right of way. That's accurate, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's.
Everyone.
Yeah, it is a little more expensive for the it's vinyl coated, but I mean not extreme.
I want to read a comment in from the attendees. Kurt Wilson says chain link fence is not ugly when black coated. Wood fences degrade fairly fast and look like crap after 10 years if not maintained. Thank you, Kurt, for that comment. I'll remind council that this was also taken up by the Planning Commission. They had these very same discussions, and that's after the lengthy discussions and including all the concerns just mentioned tonight. This is the recommendation they came to you with, along with the other recommendations from UDC. Correct, Landon?
That is correct, Mayor.
Councilmember DePinto?
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, and I get it. And Kurt's obviously a developer. He probably knows about the cost of putting those up and if they're ugly or not for some of those residential folks as well. But yeah, like other council members said, if some business wants to put up some chain link fence in an area that they probably shouldn't have it, it might hinder their customers, might hinder new customers and people thinking it looks good. And the argument is, whether you think that the city is responsible for making sure that, there's certain codes that I agree that we should be, maintaining and making sure that there's not some nuisance properties and all that. But by and large, it's your own property, your own business. I tend to agree with some of the people on the less government's better on those issues. I don't think that we should be dictating what color their building is, and there's some areas that we could do that and to make it look nice and beautification, all that stuff. But I could get behind this. The only thing that I have issues with is the landscape requirements. Some of the ones that I don't think we should be requiring a lot of this stuff. I think should allow chain link fencing. Honestly, however they want to do it, however the homeowner or business owner wants to do it. If it looks horrible, that's their issue.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear what you said. Did Kurt mention about black fencing? Did you use that word? It got lost.
He just said that it looks more attractive than the silver fencing and stands up to
black does. I agree. It tends to somewhat look more like wrought iron, a little bit. But to Mr. DePinto's point, I mean, We have color schemes we allow on buildings or don't allow. So we have these parameters for visual beauty, and I don't think chain link fencing is going to really cut it, but that's just my opinion. And oh, and the other thing is, then you have to have somebody look after the landscaping. And what if the hedge dies and they don't replace it? That's going to look ugly. What if it turns yellow? I mean,
Landon, I have a question from an attendee. Evan Mann would
Please.
like to know if this would also apply to city-owned stormwater facilities.
I would have to check to see, maybe Cody, you know this, I'd have to check to see if city structures are exempt from those, from our landscaping requirements. I don't know that off the top of my head. Do you know, Cody?
But we were required to follow our own requirements. Obviously, any chain link fence, we wouldn't make someone rip down their chain link fence and put a new one in, they'd be grandfathered in. And just clarification on the vinyl coating or the black fencing, we have allowed that. As you know, from the RV storage, the auto wrecking yard, they have vinyl fencing, which is that black fencing, and they just have a net on there. It's been kind of the agreement to bring some of that unsightliness away of those fences you guys are talking about. So we have already allowed vinyl fencing under our current code. This is talking about that silver chain link fencing that has no barrier, no blockage. It's just a see-through fence. And that's it's brought on by the original ruling had been brought on by a facility that was built on the way to Walmart on the left side. If you guys drive down there, I don't want to name the facility, but that's where the kind of chain link fence original rule came from, is to stop chain link fencing because of that. This is allowing chain link fencing again. So we don't, if we don't currently allow chain link fencing, we do allow vinyl fencing with certain parameters. This would allow chain link fencing with these parameters. So it actually would loosen up the code a little bit. Whereas it's not tightening because we don't allow chain link fencing currently in those areas.
And it does allow staff the opportunity to look at each request individually and make decisions based on all of those factors. If a citizen is still unhappy with that, they do have the option of asking the hearings examiner to take a look at their particular case. Councilmember Blair?
In regards to that last question, every city building that I can think of has chain link. And specifically what they were talking about was the drainage ponds. All of those have chain link, just bare chain link fence around them, and they are within the right of ways to the road. So it seems the city has been putting those up regardless of the rule to not have them. Are we going to be voting on this tonight?
Yeah, so
Yes.
what's brought before you tonight is a package of UDC updates as recommended by staff and by the full planning council. This is planning commission. This is what they want you to recommend. If you're not allowed at this point to pick and choose which ones of the recommendations. You either adopt the entire package or you send it back to the planning commission with your recommendation request for change. They work on it and bring it back to you again as a package.
Okay, so they have linked all of these together, so we're not voting on the three separate issues.
Right, so once a year, there's a docket that comes before the planning commission for all of the recommended and requested changes to the UDC. They look at that as an entire package and then send the recommendations on to you after considerable work with staff and the package that was presented to you in your packet. So once a year, you get to take a look at this as a packet. And then if you don't like it, you send it back with recommendations. They work on it and bring it back revised until you're happy with it.
Okay.
And if I can just, sorry, Councilmember Blair, just to piggyback on what the mayor said, staff is considering bringing individual development code amendments and changing our policy. To this point, we have done kind of a once a year annual code update. We are considering just bringing development code amendments as needed or as desired from applicants or from staff or whoever. So council's feedback on that would also be appreciated. But at this point, it has been staff's policy and could continue to be staff's policy if this is what we want to bring development code amendments yearly instead of as requested.
Okay, so just, I wasn't finished yet.
Go ahead.
So to clarify, so this city council is the legislative body of this city. Are you saying that we cannot make amendments to this proposal? We have to send it back to the planning commission, who then will either make those adjustments or not, and they get to decide what is in this policy, or like technical legislation, I guess. I'm not understanding that. Why would we not be able to make an amendment and then pass it with the amendment here?
Yeah, so good question, Councilmember Blair. So a lot of times when the council, when planning commission brings these changes to you, they have all the changes in mind when they make an adjustment here. So like the chain link fence could be linked to another part of the amendment or development code they're changing. So that's why they have it all as one package. So if you change this, it could change how other things look in those code updates. So that's why it's an all or nothing with them, the planning commission, and the planning commission's specific job is to do this. Do the planning. You know, council is totally in your purview to look at these things and go through and make sure they're correct. But their focus is just on this planning and making sure it's correct. So they have a little deeper dive into it than council has to get into or gets into. So that's why it comes as all as one package. But as Landon said, we will be bringing individual code updates to you that don't have links to other codes that require an all or nothing approval.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah. Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you, Mayor. Landon, I really hope that you all do that. Bring up those amendments as needed. I find it very archaic and very just inefficient that we only do it once a year. I think it's hard on developers. I think it's hard on business owners that want change, that they have to wait a year, if not longer, a year and a half, or up to 2 years because of the timing. So I really do hope that happens. But I was wondering, so if we pass this package as a whole right now, would it be possible to go ahead and amend like this regarding the chain link fencing? Could we bring that back pretty quickly to amend that? Or what's the timetable look like on that?
We'd probably take it back to planning commission first, just get their feedback on anything that's, what they're there for is before we bring anything to you, then the planning commission who, have been asked by the city council, selected by the city council to make recommendations on planning issues. They would want to take another look at it to see if they have any more recommendations. So if, say this gets passed tonight, and you want to re-amend it, then it would go to the planning commission meeting in November. So you'd probably be seeing it December kind of thing. And I doubt too many people are wanting to put up chain link fences in December. So, I think we have the time to do it.
Thank you. And I would urge council to go ahead, because there's a lot of other good stuff in this packet here. I would urge the council to pass this now, and then go ahead and amend this, as Landon was telling us on that timeline, and have it done hopefully in December if possible. I think that would be a good route to go, and kind of work out some of those issues with the chain link fencing.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
I just wanted to say the word that comes to mind for chain link fencing is it's very utilitarian. And I think there's a place and time for that, but not in certain areas of our city. I think it would look horrible.
Councilmember Blair.
I was going to say the same as Joe. I don't want to hold up anything else for that one piece, but I would definitely want it going back to them and make whatever changes they need to get rid of those landscape requirements.
Understood.
Landon, keep going.
Okay. So we took a look at reviewing design standards for RV and mini storage, potentially to loosen some of those regulations. The current regulation is RV storage and mini storage can't be built within 500 feet of arterials, arterial streets within the city, which does drastically limit where those things can be built. So after taking a look, the recommendation was no change to the existing regulations. Planning Commission felt that the regulations are helping to kind of prevent our city from being overwhelmed by those uses, because that is a significant problem that I've seen in other cities that I've worked for. Is these mini storage developments are just proliferating all over the city and really taking a lot of prime commercial land that could be used for other things. And I think the Planning Commission has similar concerns. However, the caveat to that, to the Planning Commission's recommendation being, we are releasing a new transportation system plan, which hopefully council will be seeing and adopting in the next 2 to 3 months. That, or I don't think we're doing any reclassification of arterials, if I remember correctly. Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, but should we have any reclassification where more streets are being classified as arterials or fewer, then we may want to revisit that to see if this regulation still makes sense. So any questions about that? Going once, going twice.
Councilmember Blair.
So being as someone, I bought one of these trailers recently. It's disheartening that they didn't change that, because currently there's really nowhere for anyone in town to be able to store something like this. All of the ones here are full. And the nearest one that I could find myself was in Chehalis. So this is another thing. Like I said, I don't want to hold up this package because of this one thing. But I think that needs to be rethought. Maybe instead of general arterials, have it not be down the main strip. But yeah, this is something that's lacking in our area, and by keeping it the way it is now, there's not really an opportunity for anyone to come in and fill that need.
Okay. Landon, proceed.
Okay. Fee waivers for nonprofits. So this is kind of an interesting one. We were asked by a nonprofit to consider fee waivers for nonprofit housing, but as we researched it, permit fee waivers are already allowed for nonprofit corporations registered for Washington State. So, that information was passed on to the nonprofit. We did look at possible other fee waivers for for-profit developers that want to do lower cost housing, things like that. At this point, Planning Commission's recommendation is no change to the existing regulations. However, they are interested in more fee waivers for a wide variety of housing needs that maybe the market isn't supporting. And so they do support a housing needs analysis to quantify housing stock and needs. As part of this, staff has put in for a housing action plan grant that would give us the money that we need to perhaps hire consultants to help us identify what housing needs we have here in Yelm. Maybe some that we are lacking in. So this is more encouraging council, if we do qualify for that grant, if we are selected for that grant, to then go ahead and support a housing action plan or housing action analysis, housing needs analysis, and create a housing action plan to follow up on and implement the results of that analysis. Any questions on that?
Terry?
Yes, we're gonna have to do a lot more waivers for nonprofit housing to make anything work. Last year, I brought to the planning department, the Thurston County Housing Authority. And even with the waivers that we did, there was no way they could build right over here around the corner. A fantastic site with mixed housing types. So it's gonna have to be a lot and a lot of state grants or something to get housing where you would say it's affordable.
Understood. Yeah, housing affordability is a real challenge for Washington State right now for communities all over the Northwest. So certainly if council has any direction that they'd like to give staff, we'd be happy to hear it. But at this point, that's kind of where we are as far as the fee waivers. Anyone else?
I don't see anyone else.
Perfect. Okay, tiny homes. So there's request to review regulations for tiny homes and / or alternative housing. Currently, our zoning technically allows tiny homes because we don't have minimum lot size requirements or minimum house size requirements, but our building code has not adopted the International Residential Code Appendix Q, which covers building regulations for tiny homes. So what adopting Appendix Q would do is it would formalize the allowance of tiny homes, but it would also provide pretty strict guidelines for for how those can be built and things like that. So adopting this would not mean a flood of tiny homes going through Yelm, but it would formalize the means whereby people can do that. At this point, probably the likeliest opportunity for that would be through a planned residential development, which is in our code. And that goes through a public process and a public hearing. And people would have the option to weigh in on that for whatever site somebody was wanting to do more of a tiny home development on. So this is again formalizing the allowance of them, but also putting in some pretty strict guidelines. And again, as I mentioned, Planning Commission's recommendation was the council initiate a housing action plan to determine any kind of needs for alternative housing and then act on that. So we are looking for a grant, or I should say we have submitted for a grant right now. If that falls through, then we can come back to council with other possibilities for making that housing action plan happen. Any questions about that?
Councilmember Blair.
The International Residential Code that has to do with these, could you possibly kind of give a brief overview of what the requirements are for them? Is it basically like they have to have their own power, water?
Yeah, that's essentially it, Councilmember Blair. And Cody, jump in if you have anything to add, but basically everything that a typical residence would need to have, then a tiny home is required to have as well. So, you know, you're disallowing like tiny homes on wheels, just kind of sleeping areas that don't have power, water, or anything like that. It really is meant to be a home, not just four walls. And we like that approach. We feel comfortable with that as staff, that would be a good thing.
So for instance, if someone were to build one, let's say in their backyard, and they incorporated it into their water and power system, would that end up falling under those rules? I'm not,
No, so we have a different code for accessory dwelling units. We already allow those. We permit those. This would be for standalone tiny homes that are on their own lot.
okay, got you.
Yeah, so this doesn't have anything to do with mother-in-law suites, accessory dwelling units, things like that. It's just more for standalone tiny homes that aren't an accessory dwelling to a primary one.
So this would cover, like, if someone, instead of making a whole bunch of either apartment complexes or single family homes, like if there was someone that had like a 2-3 acre lot and they wanted to make it into a tiny home village, it's basically, it sets the rules in for that they need to have power, plumbing, and all that.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
I got you now.
Yep. Yep. And if there's a lot of individual lots, then preliminary subdivisions, we do have public comment on those. That isn't a public hearing that goes to Planning Commission or City Council, but we do take comment on those from people. So, any other questions?
Very good. Proceed, please.
All right, that was actually the last item for the Unified Development Code updates. So happy to answer additional questions about any of what we've just discussed, or we can end the presentation and turn back to council.
Councilmember Blair. James, you there?
Oh, now can you hear me?
Now you can. Yep.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make the one last comment, kind of reiterate. Like I said, I don't want to hold up everything for moving forward. So I plan on voting in favor of it, but I just want to be clear that I would like it to see it go back and see some amendments to remove those landscape requirements, and also as far as like the RV storage and all that, maybe consider, rather than widespread any arterial, have it be within 500 feet of Yelm Avenue.
Yeah, we can certainly take a couple things back to Planning Commission and have more discussion about it. And then we would probably also bring whatever reamendments were proposed to a study session of City Council first, just so that we could have a lot of discussion about it and make sure that it was something that Council actually wanted, and then take it to the main meeting after that, which these already have gone to a study session for Council. So you should have seen this already, and we'll continue to follow that pattern.
Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you, Mayor. And I apologize for the way I'm going to ask this, but I try to get the information from staff, and I wasn't able to. So I'm just going to ask Kurt Wilson, that's on it's a developer out here, and I just wanted to get his contact info or have him contact me so I could kind of pick his brain on some of these issues that his concerns that he's having on these developments. So Kurt Wilson.
That phone number in the question and answer box. You can read it down there. Are you available to see that? Can you see that?
No, if he does it, sure.
His phone number's in there.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
So we would entertain a motion which would approve ordinance 1080, amendments to the Unified Development Code, section 18 of the Yelm Municipal Code. I don't get to make the motion though, I just give you that suggestion. Okay.
I move to pass ordinance number 1080, amendments to the new Unified Development Code, section 18 of the Yelm municipal code.
Second, DePeno.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? Councilmember Wood?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on how that discussion just went. It just seems like there was a lot of things that we didn't care for that need to be changed. And it almost sounds like what I'm hearing is we're going to go ahead and pass this, but you need to go fix these things. And that seems a little out of order to me. So I'll be voting no on this because I think that regardless of where we are right now, it doesn't seem right, but we can get there given the opportunity. Personally, it just doesn't seem like the right path. Seems like it should go and be straightened out first and then brought back to us for approval.
Councilmember Blair?
Thank you for pointing that out. What's the timeline if this goes back to see those changes?
Probably 90 days around that, just to be on the conservative side.
I don't imagine there's going to be much construction in the next 90 days. So I think I'm actually going to go with Councilmember Wood on this one. I'm going to be voting no. I want to see the changes first.
Councilmember DePino?
Thank you, Mayor. I get that. And I think there's a lot of, I don't think there's a lot that I have issues with, more kind of nitpicking on some of them. The reason I am voting yes, and I hope the council does too, one of the more important ones, and for me at least, I mean, they're all very important, but one that I've been working with for a while now, well over a year, is with Tim's Pharmacy. They're in the middle of planning. They want to do some renovations, and this is one of the key portions of it that they're waiting on. They need, I mean, 90 days, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 90 days more that they have to wait. And they've been waiting well over a year for this. They've been wanting to renovate since, last year they're going to. And when I talked with them and, they said, we can hold off, we can wait, but we need a decision, on this. And so I would urge the council to vote yes on this. And the ones that we do have issues with we can fix. They're not huge issues. At least in my perspective, they're not. Especially with some of them, with the chain link fencing. Yeah, there's a couple issues that it seems like we all had. And that's one of the bigger ones for me that I like to see well redone. But there's a lot of good stuff in there too. A lot of good stuff. And for some of those businesses like Tim's Pharmacy that really needs this passed, that's why I'm voting yes on this. I'm voting for them to get it done. So they can start planning, they can make those plans, and they can actually start their construction. Because I mean, even their planning, it's going to take a long time for them to actually get this built. So I would really urge council to consider voting yes on this and going back to land and to tell the planning commission the small details that we want fixed. Because I mean, there's no reason to nix the whole thing. There's a lot of good projects on it. There's just a couple of things, not the majority, at least for me, there's not the majority of things that are wrong.
I'm going to go in order of where I saw the little yellow hands go up. So Councilmember Kaminsky, then Blair, then Smith.
So as I understand it, Mayor, we're gonna have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because even if I say I want black fence versus regular chain link, it has to go back for approval. So there's too many, I agree, there's too many open-ended questions to just go ahead and say yes to this. That's my comment.
Okay, Councilmember Blair.
Councilmember DePinto, I totally understand it. And this is exactly why things should not be linked together. Myself, I don't feel there's much commitment to actually go back and make those changes without voting this down. And that's just the way I see it.
Councilmember Smith.
I'm kind of going to mimic what Councilmember Kaminsky and Blair said. I was going to say the same thing. I don't think I'll feel comfortable just approving something that we're not really in full agreement on. That's just my comment.
Typically, the mayor in these situations is just running the meeting, and I spend most of my opinion on study sessions. But I will remind the council that this process has stood the test of time for decades in Yelm, and it's why we've selected our planning commission members with such care, and they've worked so hard and long with staff to develop these recommendations over many meetings and reviews of this information. I would urge respect for the planning commission and the work that they've done, and still appreciate the opportunity for council members to come into with their recommendations well thought out and well written out. Those recommendations can then go back to the planning commission for future consideration. Councilmember Blair.
Well, I appreciate your words, Mayor. We had these discussions previously, and all of these things were definitely expressed and told to us that they would be passed on to the planning council. And it doesn't look like any of those things were changed. So while I 100% respect the work of the planning commission and councils and commissions of the past, we're not in the past anymore. And we've all said our piece on it. And what was presented to us tonight is exactly the same that was presented to us months ago, without any of the changes that we talked about. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, there is a Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to apologize to Tim's Pharmacy. Will, if you're watching this, no, I'm sorry.
There is a motion and a second before the council. You've had discussion. Is there any further discussion?
Roll call, please.
Yeah, intended to. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. An aye vote would approve the recommendations set forth by the Planning Commission. A no vote would send the entire package back to the Planning Commission for further work. In consideration of the motion before the council, how do you vote, Councilmember Blair?
Nay.
Councilmember Curry?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Councilmember Wood?
No.
Councilmember DePinto?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaminsky?
No.
There's a majority of the council present, which passes the, or excuse me, which fails the motion. So we will send this back to the Planning Commission for further work. And in the meantime, we'll talk to Landon and Cody about an opportunity for Tim's to submit their application. Anyway, we'll see how that can work out. So thank you, council, for your discussion on this and for the participation by the attendees tonight. We will move on to our next section, which is one you've all been waiting for over there. Ordinance 1081, which is the railway road rezone. And Landon, are you still on this, or is this?
Yeah, Landon's got this one.
Okay.
This is mine. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. This is a request. The initial request was to rezone 2 parcels from industrial to moderate density residential. And Planning Commission has actually asked for this entire side of the street to be rezoned to moderate density residential, and we'll get into why that is as we go along. Oh my, I guess I don't have a slide, an additional slide, so I'll just explain if these 2 parcels were to be rezoned and the rest left as industrial, then we'd have this island of residential in the middle of some industrial on the southwest and northeast sides. So ultimately, staff and planning commission felt that it would be best to rezone all parcels on that side of the street to moderate density residential to make it more cohesive. So that is ultimately what we're bringing to you tonight. All property owners were contacted through mail, and there were several public meetings, hearings about this. There has been very little opposition expressed, and in fact, at the planning commission meeting, there were 3 or 4 people that came in support of it, and I believe we do have some folks here to comment favorably on it tonight as well. So that is what we have to present for you as far as the rezone. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I will turn it back to you.
Great. Well, I would like to entertain some public comment this evening. Thank you for your patience. Come on up and address the council. Please tell us who you are and why you're here.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Richard Mackey, and this is my wife, Ashley Atkins Mackey. We own the property on the left there with the star inside that red outlined area. And we've been dealing with this process for about over a year with Tammy and the city staff to get this rezoned. The property's been the family for years, and the industrial zoning has been really restrictive. So we just hope that you guys approve the motion to rezone this to R6 residential.
Yeah, in addition, when we attended the city planning meeting, we talked about the railroad that was behind it, which at the time made sense when we thought this might go through. Industrial made sense, and now with the growing city of Yelm residential and expanding in that way makes more sense. So we're just hoping that with changing with the times and in the situation that we can consider rezoning.
Very good. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Blair.
Just to clarify, what does moderate density entail as far as units per acre?
So that is 6 units per acre. Councilmember Blair.
So we're looking at single family home.
Yes, single family townhome. Potentially there could be multifamily with moderate density residential, but there is a maximum density that you can have. So that does limit how many units can be in that zone.
If there's no further questions, we'd be looking for a motion.
I move we approve ordinance number 1081, Railway Road rezone from industrial to R6.
Second, Blair.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Zone can take place.
Mayor, before we move on, for clarification, can I get the citizens' names again? I didn't catch the last name or the wife's name.
Yeah, my name is Richard Mackey.
How do you spell that, Richard?
R-I-C-H-E-R-D.
No, the Mackey part.
Mackey, M-A-C-K-I-E. And my wife's last name is actually Atkins, A-T-K-I-N-S hyphen Mackey.
My first name's Ashley.
Any particular spelling to that, Ashley?
A-S-H-L-E-Y.
Standard, okay.
Yep.
Did you catch that, Kathy?
I got that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking. All right, that takes care of our new business. We don't have any old business. We'll go to updates. City Administrator Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
I've got 5 quick updates for you. The first one is on one of our big rocks, the Education and Innovation Center. As you may have seen on social media and the website, we are having a public meeting just to get thoughts and feedbacks on what this facility could be. As you may recall, this was part of the land that we acquired when we pivoted from the old city hall to the new building that we have here, and we acquired the land behind it. And we're essentially kicking off a brainstorming conversations of what possibilities could exist on this land, and taking that feedback and moving that into the design concept as was appropriated for the funding from the legislature that we received. So there's two dates to be mindful of. One is tomorrow. There's going to be an in-person meeting at the Yelm Community Center. And then there's going to be a second meeting on Thursday, and that will be a virtual open house that'll be conducted over Zoom on the 14th. So both of them will be from 4 to 7, and really appreciate the Public Services Department creating as many opportunities as we can for people to participate either in person or virtually. So encourage people to come and participate and share their thoughts. We also wanted to let you know, just from a customer service perspective, our passport appointments are about a week or 2 out. This is much better than the 2 months that we were recently having to endure when we were practically the only entity open in the region. So if you know of customers and constituents that are looking to get passports, they can go and book those appointments and be served, a week or 2 out, which is great news. The other thing that is really important to note, and we've pushed information out on social media, we're going to put this out on our website just to make sure everyone knows, but the Governor's Proclamation 2023, which essentially served as a moratorium for disconnecting and shutting off utilities, that has expired. It expired on September 30th. And our staff in this department that are trying to process the utilities and deal with the Governor's Proclamation and the expiration of that have decided that on November 1st, that's when we're going to go back to the normal shut-off schedule and our normal policies going forward. The team did a really great job of looking at how they could stretch this out, when they could start implementing this, and how they could best serve customers. And Council, as you may recall, one of the things that we put in place at the beginning of this was understanding people may not be in positions to pay their utility bills. We created an opportunity for them to enter into a contract. And so for those customers that are still behind, that are not caught up, they have until October 31st to pay their account in full, and they won't be shut off. The other option is to enter into a repayment contract before October 31st, and they will have up to 12 months to enter into a payment plan and complete a payment plan and avoid being shut off. So wanted to bring this to your attention, as well as to those that are watching online right now. The last 2 things I wanted to touch base on are, we're going to have a public hearing on the city's transportation system plan on October 18th at 4 p.m. This will also be via Zoom to encourage as many people to come as possible. So please save the date, listen, and encourage people to participate about our transportation plan. The last thing that I have for you is essentially a request. As you know, the summer has flown by, the legislative session will soon be upon us, and we really need to start coming together and figuring out what our legislative priorities are that we're going to ask. The roundabouts, which are part of the transportation plan that we have been pushing forward, that will continue to be the primary responsibility for us, as well as holding the line on the funding for the Yelm Loop, which WASDOT is responsible for implementing and continues to move forward. We're working with other regional partners as we develop larger regional legislative agendas, and I just want to make sure that the city's voice is heard, and those ideas that you have as council members individually and collectively gets factored in. So what I would ask is, by next Friday, October 22nd, if you could just send me a list of your policy or your budget priorities, understanding this isn't a big budget year in the legislature, but if by Friday, October 22nd, you could send me your list. I've asked the department directors to do the same. And just as we've done in the past, I will compile all those and we'll tee that up for a discussion for you all on Tuesday, October 26th, as you start crafting your legislative agenda. So that's the last update I have. Glad to answer any questions.
I'm sorry. We thought you were going to keep going there for a while.
No, I'm done. I'm glad to answer any questions.
No, looks good. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the work you've been doing, especially with the budget materials that the council will be seeing at a coming up meeting. So we'll go on to council member reports. We'll start with council member Blair.
I had SWAC last week. It was mostly some procedural stuff, but there was discussion regarding the county's single-use plastic ban that's partly gone into effect and will continue. There was some talk about with how stores not supposed to be using the single plastic bags, but now they're just using the other ones that are like 5 times as much plastic. Me personally, that's kind of seems to be the unintended consequence. But just to so everyone has the heads up, I don't recall the exact date, but the next phase of it is regarding basically like the takeout trays. People aren't going to be allowed to use the foam ones anymore. And then there's also some other changes where, for instance, the little packets of utensils and stuff, they're changing that to where instead they're asking, or I don't know, not 100% sure if it's a requirement, but it's supposed to be by request and not just handing it out with every order. Basically, the intention there, I'm guessing, is to lower the amount of those single use like forks, spoons, fork and knives and that kind of stuff. If I remember right, that probably includes little ketchup packets and that kind of stuff. So the business owners, I'm sure you're aware of it, but just a heads up, that's coming. And then again, also for just consumers, be aware that it's going to be in the future, it'll be the point where you have to ask for those things rather than it just automatically being given to you. Other than that, that was pretty much the extent of what I've got for you.
Okay, Councilmember Curry.
On October 6th, I was at Southeast Thurston Fire Commission meeting. They are going to use the schools people for their landscape architecture work at the Lawrence Lake Station when and if it gets built. The mechanics, the old vehicle, as Chief King refers to it, the red bomb thing, has been replaced with a fairly new service vehicle. They have hired 2 new firefighters who were slated to go through the academy. However, Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater have gone together and combined fire equipment and are running a fire academy at Tumwater, I believe. And instead of a $20,000 per firefighter cost, $2,000. Okay, on the 7th, we had a water tower planning meeting and we're working on the dedication. We've made a deal with the filmmaker, Jared Potter. He's going to have it.
The 23rd of November.
23rd of November.
Right.
Okay.
I was getting to that.
Sorry.
Anyhow, he's gonna do a short little film that we're going to, the water tower committee is gonna give to the city that will introduce and kind of do a little backup on the whole project. On the 9th, I was at the farmer's market and I'm getting sad. It will soon be gone for the season. And today I was at the chamber luncheon to meet the candidates. We enjoyed it with the kind of serial campaigning, kind of like serial dating. It was a ding and you move to a table and so on and everything else. And it was interesting to get a chance to talk to everybody. That's it.
Councilmember Smith.
Well, I was at the Cochrane Park grand reopening and that was nice. The city's done a great job.
Forgot that one.
Oh, you did. And I was at the chamber lunch today and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it serial dating.
No, it's serial campaigning.
Speed dating is what they like. That's what they likened it to. But actually it was a lot of fun. It was hard to get the 4 minutes went by really quick, but that was it. That's it. I do have a South Thurston Economic Development Initiative meeting this Friday, so.
Councilmember Wood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the council, or excuse me, the chamber luncheon as well. Got an opportunity to interact and get to know some of the candidates that I hadn't previously had an opportunity to meet. And I have meetings this week. That's my report.
Very good. Councilmember DePetto?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't have any committees. I have them coming up this week. I do say that I do want to say that I am a little disappointed in how this went down. Not in the council. I get the reasons why a lot of people voted no against the ordinance 1080 for the Unified Development Code amendments. I get your reason. I don't blame y'all at all, and it's your own vote to do it. I do blame the system, how it has to be chosen as a package. I don't know if we can change this in the future to do amendments one at a time, but there was no reason some of the good amendments in there had to fail because someone didn't like one amendment or another. And like I said, I get the reasons why a lot of council members voted against this. I'm not blaming y'all. I get that. The only issue I had was that, we shouldn't have to we shouldn't have to pass everything or not pass everything just because it's attached to something else. And I hope in the future that we can maybe separate it out. So the ones that need to have some more work done can have some more work done, and the ones that are ready to go are good to go, and we can pass them individually. So that's all I had to say about that. Other than that, appreciate the banter and the conversation on it. It was good discussions.
Councilmember Kaminsky?
Last week, I crashed the Arts Commission meeting just to be a fly on the wall and see what they were talking about. And it's a great group. They have a lot of good ideas. They were wondering why we didn't have like a beautification committee, but honestly, I don't want to be on any more committees. So we'll just, I don't know, are they supposed to report to us as a council, or how does that work for them? The commissions.
They would bring any ideas that they come up with to council for consideration.
Okay, so that was really good. And I did connect with Suzanne, I think it is. She was showing me some of the ideas for wayfinding signs. So that was very interesting. And I did attend today's lunch. It was really fun. I got saved by the bell quite a few times. And it was much better than getting up there and giving a speech. So it was a really lovely afternoon. That's my update.
Great. Well, I'll start with that. I'll tag into that. I was a little concerned with using a public facility to host that many people in an enclosed space. So we worked carefully with Yelm Chamber Board and Director, and we found a really good way to accommodate those people. I was very appreciative of all of the attendees working within those guidelines to have a safe meeting. We kept the doors slightly open to get cross ventilation. Most everybody stayed with their masks on when they weren't actively eating and drinking, and the tables were spaced out. So it was a good opportunity for the 9 candidates who showed up to have some interaction with, so probably 40, 50 people who showed up to listen to them. So thanks to everybody for participating in what is a very unique exercise in speed council candidate dating that we've ever had.
Speed campaign.
Speed campaigning. Thank you. On behalf of what I did last couple of weeks, last week we had an opportunity, local leaders got together with 10th Congressional District Representative Congresswoman Strickland and to listen and to give her feedback from her constituency. She's very interested in promoting affordable housing on base and in our communities. She's been closely following the redistricting discussions that are happening. She's still interested in serving the communities that support JBLM. She's very interested in supporting law enforcement. She wants her tag phrase for that is safe, just, and secure. And she's going to work with law enforcement to help get there with everyone. We really appreciated her reassurance that despite what we might be seeing on the news, regardless of network, that the deals are being made by our representatives to Congress, and that the work of the nation, the federal government, will continue. And it was the way she phrased it was very reassuring. We appreciate that. And then her other recommendation is that she'd like to see us work toward a statewide network of regional mental health facilities that would help with mental health and homelessness that it sometimes generates. So she advocates for making state funded mental health facilities. I attended the Risk Management Services Agency Board meeting. On the September 30th, I participated in what we call 30, 60, 90 interviews with our 5 latest employees. And that's Sarah Williams, Erica Cecil, Savannah Cervantes, Landon Hawes, and Stephanie Dice. It's hard to believe that Stephanie has only been with us for 90 days, considering the amount of work she's put in. But we have these interviews with human resources to make sure that these new hires are feeling supported, any challenges that they may have encountered, and then how we can support them or best help them. And what was really nice is all 5 of these reported, one, that they really appreciated the practices used by HR to recruit, interview, and select them for these jobs. They also feel the onboarding was excellent, and they all feel safe, secure, and supported, and very happy with their jobs. We're lucky to have them. And kudos to Karen Bennett and Lori Lucas in HR for their work on getting these really great team members to join our team. On the 30th, I, along with Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Curry, did attend the rededication of the Cochran Park facility, wastewater treatment facility. It's the team there has done an amazing job. Kudos especially to Emily Menifee and Tony Reese. They kind of like adopted that park, and Emily will be basically in charge of making sure that that park is functioning the way it's supposed to. And you couldn't find 2 more proud people. In fact, I forwarded a voicemail that I got from a local citizen who was just so impressed, not only with the park, but with his interactions with those employees of the city, and expressed his gratitude for all their work and their positive attitude. On the 1st, I had the Thurston Regional Planning Council meeting, and tonight I may be able to get in the last half hour of the RMSA annual meeting and then attend the expo virtually tomorrow and Thursday. And that is my report. The words that everyone wants to say on a Tuesday evening.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you, staff, for your support on making this meeting happen.